radio check.
Now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And now, if you're not completely satisfied, a few words from better than ever in your neighborhood. You'll be amazed.
Everything pharmacy.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of RX Radio, a podcast about everything pharmacy. Really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Today's episode is awesome. I got a chance to speak with a pharmacist over in England, and man, was that a blast of a conversation. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say that I'm really trying to have as many different types of pharmacists on the show. I'm trying to find pharmacists that are in different industries that are not common, and also pharmacists that are across the globe. So if you or you know any pharmacist that would be interested in being a part of the show, please feel free to reach out to me. You can shoot me an email at hellorxradio@gmail.com. Again, that's hellorxradio@gmail.com. I'd really be interested in having all different types of pharmacists from all over the world on the show here. Lined up, we have an interview with the owner of an independent pharmacy. We have a pharmacist that's going to talk to us about nutrition. We also have an ER pharmacist that's going to be on the show, and I'm really excited to get this content out to you. But in the meantime, please enjoy the conversation I had with Thorn, a pharmacist over in England. All right, so let's get into it. Thank you very much, Thorn, for joining me here on this wonderful Tuesday morning. You're on vacation. I'm kind of on vacation.
Yeah, I'm in sunny Spain at the moment, but I'll be back to work next week. So it's really great to talk to you and to have the time to do so as well.
Yes, I know. Again, I greatly appreciated that you're taking the time out to sit here and talk with me. So to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm a community pharmacist. I work mainly in Bolton in the northwest of England. And so I think you call it floater pharmacist, don't you, where people go to different places?
Yeah.
So I have one chain that I work for mainly, but then I'm a floater pharmacist at different places in the country. So I've worked as far as Kent. I've worked in I work in Garstang, which is about an hour's drive away from me as well. So I've worked in Hastings. I've worked in different areas of England. But I'm really passionate about pharmacy, and so I've worked really hard to promote the pharmaceutical profession in the media here in England.
Wow.
So I've been on the BBC, I've on media, in radio, and on TV as well.
Yeah.
I have a regular slot on BBC Radio Lancashire once a month, and we have a pharmacy phone in. So it's a bit like what you do here, and doing podcasts and videos. I think it's really great to talk to people and share what we do.
Yeah, no, I follow you on Twitter, and I must say, I'm like, man, she's doing awesome things for the profession. She's on all these shows and TV, and it's great. I'm really happy to be able to have you on here as well. I used to be a floater pharmacist, actually. How is that? What's that like? Is that something that's ideal, enjoyable? I personally didn't like it as much because it was hard for me to build relationships with my patients. But then I also liked it because it was cool because you got to see how different pharmacies worked. And, especially some pharmacies, I don't know if it's like over there, but some pharmacies in different areas are significantly different depending on the type of neighborhood you're in. So how's that for you?
So like I said, I have a regular chain of pharmacies that I work for. And then I have regular branches of those. And what's great is I know the patients, I know the staff, and I sort of know the skill set in that area. But sometimes I will take up emergency work, or I'll go and work in other parts of the country. And it can be quite difficult because you don't know what you're walking into. Sometimes you'll come in and there'll be piles of baskets to check before you even walk in the door.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know the skill set of the staffs who are with you. So you have to sort of make an assessment when you first walk in as to how you're going to manage that day. I think there's a lot to be said. I always see this thing about floater pharmacists or locum pharmacists, as we call them, being really lazy. Mm-hmm. I think that's really not the case. I see some really hard-working pharmacists, but who maybe don't want to be tied to an individual branch.
Yeah.
I'm quite lucky in that I do have regular branches, but I get to go and visit elsewhere as well. So I get to experience different things and take the good practice and share it with the branches that I work at.
Yeah, I still, even though I have my own store now, I like to, sometimes pick up overtime shifts in some of the other pharmacies just to continue to get those differences of how things operate and things like that. And what about like the volume of prescriptions you guys fill? Does it vary differently from some of the stores that you work for in your chain, or is it all pretty much very similar? Or what's that like?
I think I've worked for pharmacies where they're doing about 14,000 items a month, right down to maybe about 3,000 items. So I've sort of done the whole scale really, and I've worked in pharmacies where I've worked with as a second pharmacist. I mean, do you guys regularly have two pharmacists on the premises?
It's very, I don't want to say it's rare, but there's not many stores, at least that I work at in my chain, that has two. There are some, for us, it depends on the chain. So there's some chains that are just generally more known to be more busier than others. Yeah. And sometimes they'll have two working at the same time. But for the most part, it's usually just one pharmacist, maybe with a day or two of the week that you'll have an overlap of two different pharmacists. Yeah,
the majority of pharmacies here tend to just have one pharmacist. But I mean, in the future, what I'd like to see is for maybe a prescribing pharmacist to be available with a pharmacist, and then if there's any minor ailments, which we're really pushing for here. So I think the healthcare system obviously is very different where you are.
Yes.
But, for us, with the NHS, to me, it's about preserving the NHS. So if people can use the pharmacy first before they then think about using the GP or even A&E, that means we can help protect the NHS. And so what I want to see in the future is more prescribing being done in community pharmacies on the high street for minor conditions. And in some areas of the country here, for example, we have schemes where you can be prescribed certain medication by the pharmacist under set conditions for set people. And that prevents people going to see the GP and going to A&E.
Yeah, I can see how that can definitely take a load off the expense of not only your economy and everything, but also the access to healthcare as well. It's very different over here where we're now getting into even just the thought of letting pharmacists prescribe. And we're nowhere near to that being like mainstream, for the entire country. And, there's a lot of things that, we obviously know that we can do, as a pharmacist, and we can prescribe. And but just because of the law and legally on paper, we're not allowed to. And that's really hindering a lot of care that people should be getting quickly than they should be.
The future of pharmacy, really, because we know about the medicines. We know intrinsically what the medicines do. And we know the harm they can do, and therefore we have to know the conditions. And therefore, I think pharmacists on high street are really accessible and the perfect package for patients. And I was going to ask you, how much would it cost to fill a prescription, or does it vary depending on the drug?
Yeah, so that's where we differ greatly, I think, in terms of operations, I guess. So everyone here, for the most part, most people here will have medical or health insurance that's given through their employer. With Obamacare, that's now you can buy it directly, like from the government in the marketplace. So given that most people have insurance, the insurance companies will decide to charge them a copay. So let's say, a random medication like simvastatin. Let's say the simvastatin that would cost the pharmacy, X amount of dollars to pay. We would charge the insurance company, let's say the medication costs $50. We'll say no matter what, like if you didn't have insurance, you have insurance, we're going to charge you $50 to pay for this prescription, for you to get this prescription filled. The insurance company will either have two models. They'll say, we're going to charge you a flat rate fee of $10 for every medication that's a preferred medication, or we're going to charge you a certain percentage of that. So it could be either way, and it just depends on the plan. Now, if you don't have insurance, which some people that are unemployed or self-employed or decide not to buy insurance for the marketplace for other reasons, then you would have to pay that $50 out of pocket for that medication.
You're on a long medication.
Yeah. So, there's certain pharmacies that try to, for example, the chain that I'm working for, there's certain medications that we give for free. With a valid prescription, just to try to help. It goes both ways, where we try to help the community, but at the same time it helps with bringing the complementary prescriptions as well, like from a business standpoint. And then there's other chains that have a list. It's called a $4 list. That was real big when it happened here. They basically they curated a list of medications that you can get for $4 for a 30-day supply, or I think it was, or $10 for a 90-day supply. And once you had a valid prescription for that medication on that list, whether you had insurance or you didn't, it would only cost you that $4 or $10.
Yeah, which is a big difference from what we have in England, where at the moment the prescription charge is £8.60, and that could be, the doctor could have written a prescription for 84 simvastatin, or they could have written a prescription for 28 or whatever quantity, but the patient will only pay that charge, or they're exempt. So if they're under 16, for example, or if they're on maternity card, or if they have a prepayment card, then obviously they're exempt and they don't pay for it. Which is, I think, one of the things I think is that wherever we are, we've always got this issue of maybe people don't realise the value of the support available at the pharmacies. So we have like retailers like Pound World here, and they sell their paracetamol at maybe 20 pence. But people don't realise that you're not getting any advice at these places. You're not getting any support. You're not going to be told if it interacts with your medication. Medications aren't apples and pears. They can kill people. Yeah. And pharmacists are there to help and provide support for everyone.
We have that here too, where you can go to a gas station and buy like ibuprofen, like over the counter, and without even having anywhere near a pharmacist. So. Now, because you have a flat rate fee for all your medications, is there an incentive from prescribers and when people go to pick up their medications to get like 84, simvastatin versus a 30-day simvastatin, like 30 simvastatins? Or?
Well, some patients who then pay for their prescriptions might say to their prescriber, "Can you write me a private prescription?" I'm not sure whether it's correct or not for some medications, but for some medications, the prescriber will then give them a private prescription, which can be cheaper than paying their £8.60. Or sometimes they will give them higher quantities. But I think it's very difficult. It's obviously based on the prescribers having the chat with the patient. But in some of the areas of the country here, things like paracetamol, the doctors aren't prescribing anymore. But so the patients are coming to us as the pharmacists and saying, "Well, why haven't they sent the prescription through for paracetamol?" It's because the prescribers are saying, "Well, you need to buy it." And then that's a difficult conversation for pharmacists then to have, to say, "We're not preventing you from having it, but your prescriber stopped it."
Yeah.
And people can't afford it. And that's probably one of the hardest conversations I have to have.
So, for the example of paracetamol, if the doctor, if they prescribe it, will they be able to get it for the flat rate fee at the pharmacy, or because it's available over the counter, do they have to buy it at the price set by the pharmacy?
Well, no. So if you are exempt, so you don't pay for your prescriptions, then obviously anything that's prescribed on that green prescription will be free of charge. So you'll get your paracetamol free of charge. But if you pay for your prescriptions, then it's probably more worthwhile to buy the paracetamol from the pharmacy. So obviously some people will choose to go to the gas station, like you say, and buy the paracetamol.
Gotcha.
So coming back to the paracetamol, it's so maybe elderly people over 65 who don't pay for their prescriptions might have been prescribed paracetamol, but the doctors, to say the people who are in charge, are basically saying, "We don't want to prescribe this anymore. You're going to have to buy it yourself." But there's this conversation that's not being had between the prescriber and the patient, which means that the pharmacy is left to explain that.
Gotcha. So, in terms of, you were talking about having a prescribing pharmacist and having, I guess like a for lack of better terms, a verifying pharmacist at the pharmacy. What is the workload like in terms of trying to provide care to patients directly? And where I'm getting at here is I'm trying to see, like, do you have a lot of technician help usually in helping with, I guess, daily workflow tasks so you can provide more care to patients, or is that a challenge for you guys?
Well, I guess the future of pharmacy for me is to have a prescribing pharmacist and then that verifying pharmacist, like you said. But that's not happening at the moment.
Mm.
That is for me the future and what I'd like to see. At the moment, we do have technicians here, and they not in every pharmacy though. And you'll maybe have heard about the cuts to community pharmacy funding,
Mm-hmm.
which means that a lot of when I go and work as a locum, I'm seeing a cut in a lot of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
So one week I went and there was 2 members of staff. The next time I went, I've heard that one other member of staff had been made redundant.
Wow.
And then it was just me and 1 member of staff. I think the worst situation that obviously when you work as a locum, you don't know what situation you're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
The worst situation I ever ended up in was where it was a weekend and there was 2 counter assistants and then just me at the back as the pharmacist. And I was having to type up the labels, pick the medication, and then check the medication.
Yeah.
To me, it was just dangerous. But I think sometimes some chains can be not want you to maybe raise those issues, and therefore for some pharmacists I know that have raised issues and haven't been employed again.
Wow.
Which is very difficult as a pharmacist. And so I'm sort of making a rule now where if I'm going anywhere, I always try and ask what the staffing levels are going to be like.
Yeah.
And then I'm not willing to put myself in that position.
Yeah.
Especially when they've not decriminalised dispensing errors.
Yeah.
If you make a dispensing error, you can go to prison.
Yeah, that's. I just got chills thinking about like hearing this from you because it's so crazy to hear that because we are going through probably the exact same thing here. But the crazy thing is that you guys are getting it from the government is cutting that funding, whereas privately here we are getting the same type of issue where a lot of pharmacies are understaffed and a lot of the pharmacists are being forced to do much more work, non-pharmacy, non-clinical work that we should be doing, and it's scary because mistakes are starting to happen, and you feel the mental health of the pharmacist is starting to be affected because we feel like we're being overworked, and it's true here. Whereas I mean, there are penalties here as well. If you do something wrong, you could either lose your job or you can be charged for negligence, all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, also like someone can die or be severely injured, in the case of a mistake on the pharmacist's part. So it's so crazy to see that, across like a large body of water, and completely 2 different types of countries and regulations and healthcare systems, we're going through the exact same thing. Yeah.
And I think it's just so sad because, I mean, pharmacists, I know when I've visited, I haven't widely travelled America, but I've been to Orlando.
Cool.
I've been to went to the theme parks, obviously.
You went to Disney?
A lot of pharmacies, aren't there? And most pharmacies in the UK are within a 20-minute walking distance. So the most vulnerable patients who maybe can't get access to their might have to drive, for example, to get to the GP, or might have to drive to get to A&E. They can come and visit the pharmacy, and I just can't understand the mentality of halting the provision for the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
The other thing to point out is, so we obviously, it's not just dispensing medications and counselling patients, though it's a large part of what we do. We obviously provide services as well, such as medicine use reviews, where we go through what patients are on, and then we can feed back to the GP if there's any issues. And there's things like needle exchange services where people can come in if they're using needles and get clean supplies of needles, and that prevents dirty needles being on the streets perhaps. So there's all this extra work that we do as well as pharmacists.
Yeah.
I think we're almost like carers in the community sometimes. We get a wide variety of patients coming in to see us. I mean, I don't think that's any different from what you do.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and pharmacies over here, we're starting to, provide a plethora of all kinds of clinical services where now there's a system set up over here where now we're starting to be eligible for reimbursement from the government, from Medicare, which is like the government insurance for the people over 65. We're starting to get reimbursements for interventions. So like if we, discover that a patient's taking a high risk medication and we get them switched off of that with the consultation with the doctor, we'll actually get reimbursed for that service. And vaccinations, there's a lot of different things that pharmacies are starting to try to do to provide clinical care to patients, and while at the same time increasing revenue for the pharmacy to continue to grow and continue to operate. Do you guys have what other services do you guys have that you guys might be doing to try to both increase care and increase revenue?
Well, for example, it's flu vaccination season at the moment, so I've been talking to lots of patients and encouraging them to get their flu vaccination done at the pharmacy because, number one, it's convenient. You can just walk in and get it done. You don't even need to have an appointment. But in past years, we've seen hostility between the GPs almost, who feel that this is their service and they're losing revenue by pharmacies doing it. Now, to me, it's patient choice wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
But in the UK, we've got a GP crisis. I keep being told that there's not enough GPs, and that there's increased strain on the care. So to me, what about all those jobs that pharmacists can do? Someone who want to help, and things like flu vaccinations. It doesn't take a lot of time out of our time. We pass on the information that the patients have their flu vaccination. And to me, it's perfect because I get to have a little chat with the patient and they get to sort of know more about what we do as well. But I think it's still that hostility from some patients who probably think you're a failed doctor. You get poor doctors though, don't you? I believe.
Yeah.
You're a poor doctor. But for us, sometimes I do get some hostility as in you're a failed, what do you know? You're not a GP, or you're a failed GP, or my doctor said this. And I think it's about changing that perspective of what pharmacists are and how, we've done 5 years of training. I'm not saying I'm perfect and I know everything, but we definitely know where to look.
Yeah. And over here, it's more of the, my doctor said this and my doctor said that. It's more of like, even though you've aspired to be a pharmacist and you never even considered being a prescriber, like a GP in your terms, it's more of just like, but you're not the doctor, and we hear all that. But I think there's a new age over here of physicians that are starting to realize the value of pharmacists. And I think that at the same time, pharmacists need to be more, I would say we need to be more like you in promoting the profession and letting everyone know that we are doing so much more than just, dispensing medications. And we have so much more knowledge than just being able to dispense the proper medication. And it's just about marketing ourselves better. And I think that, over the course of the last 100 years, physicians has done a good job, or GPs has also done a good job at establishing their careers. And I think that pharmacy is really on the starting of that. GPs, psychologists, those things have been established over the last 100 years versus it's now that we're just now, starting to establish ourselves as pharmacists and our role in society. And it's more than just making pills like we used to do, or dispensing them like we've been doing the last 20 years. And I think that now is going to be a huge turning point of the pharmacy industry in establishing ourselves in healthcare as what we do. And we just need to continue that. And I think over time, unfortunately, it's going to take some time, but I think that, we're going to get there once, people keep advocating for the profession like you do.
It surprises me actually in America, where you pay for your health care, why you wouldn't go and see your pharmacy first. And you guys don't charge a consultation fee or anything, do you?
We do not, no, not at the moment.
So I can't understand why, if someone was worried, that they wouldn't just go and see their pharmacist, who could then pass them on to a GP if there was an issue, or recommend they see a GP. Because surely people don't want to be paying for GP appointments or using insurance or claiming against insurance if they don't have to.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a little backwards in that sense too. But on some tokens too, I think that if we push it too much, it would be unsustainable also. Because if everyone knew that they can just come to the pharmacy without an ability to capitalize on that, we would be slammed, I think, with work, which is it's a little of a tricky
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tricky line to play on, because I know over in the UK, that's like one of the big pushes of pharmacists. Like, you don't need an appointment, you just stop in, you talk to us, and that's what people know about us here when they do that. But it would be a struggle if that was a main push for it, because unless we had a way to capitalize on that, that might not be sustainable, because and don't get me wrong, it's not because we don't care, but it's more because we're being forced by, the owner of the pharmacy or the corporation or the chain to also do all the work that we have on the back end, while also trying to provide that care. Also being that we don't have, if we had your future of having the prescribing, pharmacist in there alongside the verifying pharmacist, that would be perfect, and if that model was sustainable, that would be ideal. But some things would have to greatly change for us to be able to then really push that for society, at least over here.
Well, I just think we need to keep talking about the great work that pharmacists do all over the globe, really, and it's World Pharmacist Day soon as well. So
yeah, that's true. It's coming up.
We need to keep talking, and everyone needs to keep sharing about the great work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
While the systems might be different where we are, they are the thing that probably joins us probably is the patient care. And I'm sure we've both got examples of times where we've really been involved with patient care. I mean, I had an instance where someone ran into the pharmacy and said, "I need some first aid," and we ran down to the bakery down the road, and there was someone having a fit. I couldn't, obviously, when someone's having a fit, you sort of leave them to have their fit and make sure it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
But, my intervention was just to call their mum and check that they were okay, check that their mum knew where they were.
Mm-hmm.
A small intervention. But people do trust pharmacists, and they know that they're there on their high street. And if there is a medical emergency, they do come and contact us. I'm sure you have examples yourself.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, I do know though, in speaking all this about how people say, it's so funny because there's some people that'll come in and say, yeah, but the doctor said to do this, or that's not what my doctor said, or whatever. But then there's some people that come in and they're like, I trust you guys so much because, they know that, especially over here, there's some prescribers that are, prescribing certain things because of they were courted by like a drug company, or they have certain other interests in mind. And the pharmacy is never seen in that light. And I think one thing that is definitely true is that people do trust us. And it's just more of like, people trust us. And I think now this actually just clicked with me right now. They trust us so much. They just don't know what we can do.
I agree. Absolutely.
And I think once we show them what we can do, and then continue to keep that trust, that's when things are going to really click and start to take a turn for us for the better. So that'd be cool. So what we did talk about a lot of problems that obviously that we're both facing, but is there any specific challenges that you would say that you guys are really facing in community pharmacy there?
Yeah, I guess it's the cuts to community pharmacy funding really, which is sort of it's an impact on the staffing. It's then an impact then on the safety, in my opinion, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but I think overall with the NHS as well, there's so much pressure, and at the moment we have a government who claims that there isn't a 7-day NHS. But I work most Saturdays and Sundays, so I can definitely tell you that pharmacies are open on Saturdays and Sundays, and we're open long hours as well. At 8:30 till 7. 9 till 11.
Yeah,
we're always open, aren't we?
Wow, yeah. We're open pretty. I think there's some pharmacies here that are 24 hours, and then we have like I think the average is probably like a 9 to 9 or like an 8 to 9, I would say, or even 8 to 10. I think are some pharmacies over here. What about what's going really well for you guys? What is something or something that you're really enjoying at the present moment in community pharmacy over there?
I think it's the services. It's the fact that we can do them, and we're not being given enough of the services that we want to provide. So I'm really calling for a national minor ailment service, because that scheme that I talked to you about earlier, where we can provide certain drugs for certain conditions, isn't a national scheme yet. And if that was a national scheme, that would save the NHS so much money, and it would save patient time. I know people are going to say to me, oh, well, people will abuse the system. You'll always get the people who just come in because they want it for free.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, if a GP appointment costs the NHS £45, and then the NHS then has to pay for the cost of the drug, and then obviously the filling of the prescription charge,
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money, which could then be a smaller. I don't know, a really small fee could then go to the pharmacy for providing that service, and it still wouldn't add up to the same cost as that whole GP package fee.
Yeah.
But so it's services that, and I love providing, and I love going out and talking to the patients. Flu vaccines. Last year I did lots of flu vaccines, and then again this year, we've started talking about them early to patients and letting them know that they're available. Medicines use reviews. Some of them are unprompted. For example, I found a patient and I've been talking to them, and they said, I've got headaches and I've been feeling a bit dizzy. And obviously there's the algorithm for hypertension as to what drugs you start off with, and then you add another one in. And this patient had basically been stopping the first drug as soon as they'd been started on the next drug.
Mm-hmm.
So their blood pressure was going further and further up, and the clinician was just adding drugs.
Yeah.
So through a medicines use review, I was able to then find out that was the case, contact the GP and say they needed an urgent appointment. And then they got taken off lots of the drugs that they were on. So, sometimes, it's really hard. Sometimes you go into work and probably like you come back and you think, what happened today?
Yeah.
I feel exhausted. And, I feel like I couldn't finish everything. But then there's these great opportunities that happen. And you just think, I love my job. I love this profession. Look at how many people we help, and the lives that get saved by pharmacy. One of my colleagues did CPR and saved the patient's life.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
It's more rewarding than this profession.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true, and a lot of times you struggle with, when you're under so much stress and you're under so much, just lack of help and so much going on, and then you have that one patient that is just really looking like to you for help, and then you can do nothing but do your best to help them, and a lot of times it's in that one little moment that makes it pretty much all worth it, I would say. So but it's definitely a challenge though. I think we heard a little bit about your what your future looked like for what you hoped pharmacy to look like, but
my hope, I don't know if it'll happen, but I think we need to be looking into what pharmacy can move forward with without losing our roots, because I think I'm quite proud of the fact that we made drugs. We make drugs,
Mm-hmm.
and there obviously are pharmacists who are still making drugs in industry. But just because we don't do that necessarily in our dispensary doesn't mean we should let go of it.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for the community pharmacist?
Say, make sure that probably the best thing. I think the thing is to go into work and just think, I might not finish everything, but I'll do my absolute best going into work today, and realizing that at the end point it is really the patient, and whatever else is going on, and it can be quite frantic sometimes, as you know.
Yeah.
It's just about letting the patients know exactly what we can do, because they might turn around that one time and say, no, I'll talk to my GP. That one opportunity that you get to help them, that's just loyalty for life to me. They'll come back to you. They'll tell their friends about their pharmacist. They'll bring you boxes of biscuits wrapped up every so often just to say thank you. And that's not what we do it for, but I think the patients do appreciate it. So I think we all just need to keep doing what we're doing and keep talking about the profession. And, we absolutely love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't. I can't stop talking about pharmacy. At night I can't stop talking about it. I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
I think we just need to keep promoting the profession, really.
Yeah, that's so awesome that that there's other people out there like that feel that same way, and I'm sure it's great to connect with other pharmacists that feel the same way. But quickly, I don't know about you, but I only take care of people so they can bring me coffee. That's like the main reason. Or chocolate. I only really help people so they can bring me gifts and chocolate. So, but
no, I don't know about you, but I can't function without coffee in the morning.
Yeah,
So
no.
first job in the morning is to get some coffee, and then I can be a nice person.
Yeah, no, that's true. I drink so much coffee, it's ridiculous, but that's a whole nother topic for another podcast. Anyway, Thorn, thank you so much for, again, taking the time to talk to me today about community pharmacy over there in England. What's the best way people can reach you?
The best way, you can send me a tweet. I absolutely love Twitter. It's @ and then it's THORRUNGOVIND. Or that's the account where I talk about life and pharmacy. Or if you just want the pharmacy tweets, it's @Thorn, which is PHARMTHORRUN.
Perfect.
So it'd be great to chat to anyone who wants to talk about pharmacy in England or just pharmacy generally.
Perfect. And I'll definitely link that into the podcast description. But again, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
No problem. Yeah, it's been brilliant. Keep talking about pharmacy.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I really hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I hope it was as insightful to you as it was to me. Please leave me a comment on Instagram or on iTunes. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, any feedback